think that's a logical decision why. But it's all the same group. It's all the same kind of federation, or they're all working together. And they decide, okay, we'll send the Nordics first to meet with President Eisenhower, and then later we see more of the Greys.
Okay, so the one thing that really sticks out to me about what you've discussed before too is freaking Earth's refusal, or not just Earth's refusal to the alien offers, but you also mentioned hybrid humans and Greys. So is there a way that you can kind of give a little bit of a story on that so that we can kind of get an idea of what that's all about?
Yeah, like one question Richard Dolan have, I often quote him because he's probably the best, most well-known ufologist in America. He's very good. He's a great man in the sense he's done such great research. And what he's saying with regard to humans, he said when he first heard about experiences describing seeing aliens that look fully human, he rejected the idea. He said, well, that doesn't make sense, that evolution on some planet, halfway across the galaxy would evolve in such a way to look just like us. He thought that's suspicious. That doesn't make sense. But there's so much of these reports. So I think there's different ways of looking at that. One theory Richard Dolan has is that way in the distant past, maybe 40,000 years ago or 30,000 years ago, they took fully anatomically modern humans from Earth, brought them into their society. So now they have a large population of human beings as part of their society, working with the aliens. So they're alien in the sense they're alien to our culture. They're part of alien culture. And people like Susie Hansen, others who've actually been on the craft or even in underwater bases, like in the South Pacific, there's an underwater base. They see humans right up on the stage in these kind of lecture halls with 250 people standing there with a Grey. The Grey is telepathically communicating in this lecture hall. And there's a human being there who introduces the Greys and gives a speech. It's all telepathic. But it's a human, and she's even noticed one fellow who got gray over the years, someone she's seen over a 15-year period, the same man, and they wear blue overalls, and they're part of their structure. They're not like humans they took from Earth, like in their lifetime. Their humans were born or raised within that society. So I think that's one explanation for humans that people see on craft, is that they're real human beings. They may have been taken from Earth. Or another theory is certainly that we as humans could have been brought from other planets, and there's humans on other planets. And how did they get here? I think one quote that Linda Moulton Howe often states, so she was taught by a DIA, which is a Defense Intelligence Agency analyst back in the 1990s, that all questions of human origin have been answered, and that book is now closed. And then humans were developed from primates. They tweaked or changed the DNA of evolving primates, and that's how the gray aliens, DTs, made human beings. So this would have been a long, long time ago. So that kind of explains there's plenty of humans out there on other planets and working with the aliens. Did I over answer the question?
No, actually, you did a wonderful job of it. And I'd like to welcome Austin. He finally showed up. He said he was probably going to be late. Now, Austin Todd, this is Brian. I've been talking him up for the last couple days now. So
hi, Austin. Austin Todd, good to meet you for the first time.
My audio went out for just a second there.
Okay, yeah, we have a technical issue sometimes. So if it happens, remember we do have chat in here, Austin. So go ahead and type it out if you can't speak. Okay.
Okay, my audio went out for just a second. Let me get out and back in real quick.
I can hear you fine.
Now it's working fine now. It's good.
It's working fine. You just keep on talking. Don't move. Stand still.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So
nice to meet you, Brian.
Good to meet you, Austin.
So we've gone through President Eisenhower and the gray aliens and alien contact. Basically, is what we've done, and I have asked Brian what he believes, what his take on the difference between the Greys and the Nordic approach to first contact was with with Earth. I don't know if he was able to watch the video that I posted up on Discord or not, but that's basically where we're at right now. And I just now asked Brian about Earth's the hybrid humans and Greys. Now, with that, you mentioned something else in your videos that I caught on to, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about it, Brian. It's the quantum dimensional consciousness.
Yes, that's a line I've learned from Jeff Silver. It's in his book and a lot of his talks. The idea of dimensions, I can even describe that in Buddhist cosmology. In my own books, I've got actually a visual description of dimensions. Like the Buddha describes above the human realm, there's like the heavenly realms, the angels, we call them devas. This is a blow up. My book, Short Walk in the Ancient Path, and page 123. These, in a sense, are dimensions. These are the lower six heavens of the central sphere. And then above that's the Brahma sphere with vaster beings, and then the formless sphere. So the Buddha outlines these 31 planes of existence, which you could describe in a sense as dimensions. So quantum dimensional consciousness means that these beings on a higher dimension, they can actually be here simultaneously with us right now. It's just that we can't see them. It's like with angels or devas, they can see us, but we can't see them. So that's what's meant by the idea of dimensional consciousness, that their consciousness can interface with ours. And humans normally can't see the higher realms, but quantum dimensional consciousness, quantum means, I guess, getting close to like what's the fundamental ground of reality, like absolute zero. Yeah, what does quantum mean? The idea is that a human being can develop this consciousness, where your own consciousness as a human being in the physical body in this three-dimensional world can also relate with that higher reality. So this is part of what UFO disclosure will mean. It's not just, the President of the United States will tell us that aliens are real, but it means that these extraterrestrials or these higher realm beings, they're already here and they're among us in a sense. They're interdimensionally here, but we can't see them. So that might disturb people. So I think that's part of the meaning of quantum dimensional consciousness. So and what Jeff Silver is referring to, you should get him on as a guest. I certainly recommend. But he's saying that the Greys, they have this quantum dimensional consciousness. They're in this higher state. And they're also, they can be 3D amongst us, see our 3D world, while their consciousness is also at a higher level.
Well, that's really a good explanation right there. I mean, now Austin, is there anything that you would like to ask concerning that?
I never even really thought about alien beings having multi-dimensional, like being able to interface with multi-dimensions. I've always thought they could travel between dimensions, but I didn't think they could be aware of multiple dimensions at once. So that's kind of new to me. That's very interesting, because that ties into like spiritual stuff too,
Which brings me to a question too that he mentions as well, which was the spiritual orientation to life. So keep on going. I just wanted to add that in.
Oh,
sorry about that.
Oh, okay. So I used to think when I was a little kid and I was into aliens, like watching like sci-fi movies and stuff, that they were always from other planets. They just came here from other planets, but it was all in a physical dimension. But the more I've gotten into reading about it and really diving deep into it, and talking to people, people like Brian and stuff, and you, Roger, as times went on, I've realized it's not really as simple as they're just coming here from other planets. They're in dimensions that are parallel to yet intertwined with ours. Now Brian's opening my mind to they're also aware of multiple dimensions at the same time on top of that. So that's adding kind of a whole new thing to, and they can be in all these different dimensions at one time, not just traveling between them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of opening a new doorway for me too, for it's taken on a whole new layer just now.
That's good. Now, do you think, Brian, that you could kind of go over what you were referring to when you did say spiritual orientation of life? Like these hybrid humans and grays are supposed to be replacing human beings, and they're supposed to have a spiritual orientation to life. Now, kind of break that down a little bit and let us hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think that's getting to the fundamental reason about why the ETs are here. I think, from their perspective, at least Susie Hansen has expressed, we're spiritually retrograde. She compares it to a river where the water is running smoothly down the river, but off on the shore of the river, there's these eddies where there's old car tires and cans of pop. Water's a bit stagnant. So that's where planet Earth is right now. We're kind of stuck in these eddies. At least we're spiritually retrograde. So I think what the ETs want is for humanity to develop spiritually, because we're having a big effect on the planet with our pollution, our nuclear weapons, and everything else. So I think that's their fundamental concern. But I think spirituality to say the gray ETs, it's more just understanding the nature of reality. I'd say they have a full nature of understanding, much fuller understanding of nature of reality. And being a Buddhist, like I'm a Theravada Buddhist. I was a monk in Thailand back in 1996. And part of the whole Buddhist worldview, the Buddha said, becoming completely enlightened means you see things as they really are. So there's kind of a scientific mindset in Buddhism that if you're fully enlightened being, you're actually fully engaged with reality and you see reality, because most of us are in some state of delusion and confusion. So what's scientific and real, I think, to the gray aliens is that they're so evolved, they could be like 1 billion years ahead of us in their spiritual and mental and intellectual development. So what is natural to them at their level, to us, is like spiritual advancement. The whole idea of spiritual is it's a mysterious thing to us. Like, what do we mean by spiritual? Like magic to us might be just like everyday science to the gray aliens. So I think they're a vaster, higher intellect, a vaster state of spiritual development. Also, important quality of them is they have more of a hive mind, like because they're telepathic. The hallmark of ETs is that they're telepathic. They can't keep nasty secrets from each other or plot a coup d'etat against the president and secretly try to take over the place, because they're all telepathic and very open. So they're more of a hive mind.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that enough of an answer?
Yeah, that's pretty good. So before we go on, do you have any comments you want to make or questions you want to make, Austin, about that?
I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, you don't have to. I'm just wanting to.
I'm just thinking if there was anything.
Okay.
I was thinking if there was anything I wanted to say. So yeah, I mean, if they're totally telepathic and that each one knows what the other's thinking, they can't do anything against each. They can't have wars or any real conflict or anything. You think their empathy and everything would be perfect because they know what the other one's thinking and feeling. So they're in that perfect state of existence then.
Yeah, I think it's
that we're seeking.
Mm-hmm. And what was you saying, Brian?
I think it's a good state that they share that kind of communal kind of society. But some people would criticize this. I have a debate I did with Ian Halling. He works with Linda Moulton Howe on Earth File show every Wednesday night. They have a show at 7, and he's the announcer on the show. And some people don't like the idea. They have sort of the idea of the American rugged individualist, like I am me, and this is what I want to do, and this is what my life is about. The individualist and celebrating the individual. So people complain that, well, these gray aliens, they're losing their individuality. You know, they're more of a communal group. They're not so special. So is there some kind of a compromise there? But I think it's worth it to have not only a harmonious society, but Richard Dolan, he speculates on his videos and also in this book, he speculates that the Greys must have an extremely stable society over thousands of years, or even over hundreds of thousands of years. They probably have some type of AI government. Whereas in our society, Trump gets in, people get all upset. Then Biden gets in, people get all upset. Humans are so volatile. Our governments are so unstable. Whereas these aliens, they go on for millions of years. So it must be extremely stable. So I think there's benefits to that communal thinking with the Greys compared to human beings with all their nasty secrets and their hidden jealousies and everything else.
Yeah. Now, before I mentioned that you mentioned the fact that these were hybrid humans and Greys that you were discussing, okay? And in your videos, you make it a point to say aliens have been or humans have been created from over like a dozen different alien species.
Yeah, I mentioned that in previous talks. Yeah.
Is there a way you can kind of give us a little bit of information on that too? Because that sounded pretty interesting to me. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I got that from I forget which channel that was. Linda Moulton Howe was told by one defense intelligence agency that humans were derived from already evolving primate species, and they may have used 12 different types of alien genes to tweak and create the new human. I've got that from a few sources that it was a dozen different species of ETs in the creation of humans. But I mean, all of these are shades of gray. On my video, Brian Rue's ET hypothesis and sources, I give my sources, but I can't say I know or I'm sure. I'm saying I just have a working hypothesis, until I get better information for a better hypothesis. But I think it was, several varieties of ETs, because it also had to suit planet Earth, our gravity, our atmosphere, our microbes and everything. They had to survive on this planet. And it does seem in a way human beings don't quite fit in. Like if you're dropped in the middle of a forest, it might be hard to survive compared to like a cat or a dog or other wild animals. So it seems like we perhaps there's also a difference between human beings and hybrids. You could say in a way we're all hybrids if we were made, but then there probably is a hybridization program going on with what's called abduction or the contactee phenomenon. Like I know Ralph Epper here in Vancouver in 1942, he was in Germany and he saw 3 gray aliens right in his bedroom when he was 7 years old. He's still alive. He lives down the street from me. I've done many videos with him. But so what's probably going on with these Greys and this whole abduction contact phenomenon is they're taking sperm, they're taking eggs. So they're probably using that to create hybrids of humans. And in the long run, they probably want to hybridize Homo sapiens sapiens to make us like 2.0, something better with this quantum dimensional conscious, more of a spiritual orientation to life, more of a communal, and a change in our government, change in our society. That's probably where it's all going. Like this is a big question. Like where is this all leading?
Mm-hmm. Now, when I heard that and everything, the one thing that really stuck out to me, and I want your honest take on this when it comes to this subject, but the thing that stuck out to me when it came to contactee genetic research was the secret space program. Okay, and that's a big topic these days among ufologists. And I believe they also had some mentions of it in the old supposed KGB files that were supposed to have been found too when it came to aliens species and about the draconians. And for me, I don't know if you are aware of any of that stuff or that information, but if you are, could you kind of give me your take on those subjects, kind of off of, I know it kind of goes off of what you're talking about with your subjects, but what do you feel about those topics?
Yeah, I definitely think there is a secret space program. I remember I met Richard Dolan in person. He stayed over at my apartment in 2014. It was actually June 15th, like 10 years ago this year. And this is just after he had published a little booklet on the secret space program based upon lectures he has given. So ever since then, I basically accepted that hypothesis. I think probably since the 1950s, like Dr. Stephen Greer states that in October of 1954, they cracked anti-gravity. They figured that out because he had a particular source from I call it the secret government from within, who gave him that information. So I think the Americans have developed their own man-made flying saucers. They're called like alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs, probably since the 1950s, but certainly since the 1990s, like the triangular UFOs many people have seen are probably man-made. There's considerable evidence for that. And Linda Moulton Howe on Earth Files channel, her sources have said that we, meaning our own secret space program, whether it's American or global, has gone to 22 solar systems already. That was as of about 20 years ago, that source. So I actually believe this to be true. It makes sense that if they have anti-gravity, they've had this intention to keep it secret. And I think since day one of NASA in 1958, the original fundamental purpose of NASA is a distraction, a diversion, to make the world think that is the space program, you see, and they're competing with the Russians over there. You see, get it. It's like a magic trick. You get everyone's attention focus. Okay, NASA, Mercury, Gemini, we're going to try to go to the moon. Meanwhile, out of Area 51, they're going anti-gravity. I think some evidence for this is, the International Space Station we have up there. It was built supposedly with all these space shuttle launches, but I think the mass of it is only accounted for by about 10 or 20% of the space shuttle launches, that they probably just brought it up from Area 51 or wherever they are. So I think the Americans and basically our global power structure, the Rothschilds, has had anti-gravity craft, that is the secret space program. Not to be confused with Gaia TV. They have these people that say, I've been in the secret. They have a half a dozen guys telling all these stories. The reason why they're allowed to say this is because it's not true. But like Gary McKinnon, for instance, he was severely severely chased after by the U.S. government. This was in 2001 and 2002. He kind of hacked in because security was very weak with computers at that time. He's a British guy. He was this hacker looking for UFO information, and he discovered like non-terrestrial officers, lists of non-terrestrial officers. He saw a picture of like a starship, a very large ship named after one of the 12 members of Majestic 12. And then, the authorities caught him, arrested him, and it was a big deal. It went through from British Prime Minister Cameron and President George W. Bush. They're going back and forth to extradite him, but they decided not to extradite him to the United States and send him to Guantanamo Bay because he had Asperger's. And they thought, well, he can't take all the stress. So he cannot travel to the States. So this shows you someone who found out information about the real secret space program. It's a big deal, and they really go after this guy. But this guy, Tony Rodriguez, he can get there on Gaia TV. I also charges you $100 an hour if you want to get him on your show. And they go on and on and on about being on Mars with Nazis on Mars and the Nazis in the asteroid belt and series. They'll go on and on and on. You pay your money to $15 a month to Gaia TV. So I think there's a real secret space program, but I had Stephen Bassett on as a guest, and he said, well, when there's a knowledge vacuum like that, people tend to fill up the vacuum.
Yeah.
There's money to be made.
So when you talk about that, you also have mentioned gigantic city-sized alien motherships and that are triangular shaped ships. That kind of reminds me of the Phoenix incident, where it occurred in, like, back when I was younger. I moved from Florida to Arizona, and I really hate the fact that I moved away from there, because like 5 years later was when all that happened. You know what I mean? I would have been able to see that if I was actually still living in Phoenix during that time period. Now, when you mentioned that, that's what it reminded me of. But then also you go on to say, talk about technical and social advancements, and then secret societies, So that was like a whole culmination of good information right there, in my opinion. So I was wondering if maybe you can kind of delve into that a little bit and let everybody know your take on all that.
Yeah, well, I have in my meetup group, I met a Mason who lives somewhere in the United States. I won't give his name, but he said, Brian, the Masons have known about ETs for at least 3 centuries. He's going back to the original, I guess, Adam Weishaupt Masons, 1776 in Germany or Austria when they got started. He said that the Masonic secrets, they've had a relationship with the ETs, and the ETs, I guess, have needed this. So he said he knew a particular Mason who could talk to me about this and actually do a public video. I said, yeah, let's book it. But I never got him to book it. So this is someone I know. He claims to be an ex-Mason. So I thought, oh yeah, sure. A lot of Masons claim to be ex-Masons, but I think once you're a Mason, you're a Mason. So I think that's a true source. And I think going back maybe even further, the secret vaults of the Catholic Church, you could probably go back 1,000 years. Maybe they know about extraterrestrials, because interesting anecdote, around 2010, I was a background actor for the TV show V with the reptilians. And I was playing a cardinal in the Catholic, right in the Vatican, in this scene we were doing. And they hired a priest to show us how to put on our robes as cardinals. And I asked him about what's the Catholic view on extraterrestrials, and he was very clear on it. He knew how to answer the question. He said, well, if aliens came to Earth, we would ask them whether they, will they accept Jesus Christ as their personal savior, or perhaps they have another form of salvation. So what this indicates is the Catholic Church, they're already prepared. If there's a mass landing on the White House lawn tomorrow or in the Vatican, they've got it all prepared what to say. So the Catholics are way ahead of the Protestants in this sense. They know how to handle the situation. And also because of confession, which the Protestants don't have, because of confession, they probably find out about people encountering gray aliens in their bedroom and abduction. They probably hear these, and these stories get centralized to the Vatican. So it's a large global intelligence network with like 1.1 billion Catholics. And we know they have these secret vaults. It's something like 53 miles long of shelves of books and information. So the Catholic Church is definitely believed to be in the know about extraterrestrials. So in terms of like the American government, people think, okay, American government found out about this in July of 1947, right? That's when it began. Or was it 1941? But the Catholic Church might go back before the existence of America. So, yeah. and the Masons as well. So, and I guess just to support them, I think from an ET perspective, they needed human beings who are in the know to affect their plans, to affect the development of mankind, like the direction we're going. It's probably, in a sense, a good thing that the ETs needed secret societies, especially if you think of medieval Europe when the Catholic Church had such a tight control over it. They probably needed some boots on the ground. So I think I'm not opposed to the existence of these societies for that purpose. So this is just a theory.
It's a pretty decent one. Now, Austin has been sitting over in the background. This is probably the most quiet I've ever heard him be. Like he's
Yeah.
never this quiet. So
Yeah, I don't want to be a hog here.
No, it's fine.
No, I mean it's definitely just him. Like I've never seen him this quiet before, ever. So
Was it something I said?
No. I'm just taking it all in.
So what's your take on it? Do you have any questions that you want to ask?
When it comes to like the secret space program, to begin with, I've always thought NASA was a joke anyway, and so I was like, what? They went to the moon, and then they seemed to have kind of just went backwards from there. So it always seemed like NASA was just like this circus sideshow, and it makes sense, when he describes it being a diversion, that why it would be as such. And with regards to the Vatican and stuff, I've always thought, they may have records going clear back to maybe Atlantis or Lemuria. If you believe those cultures existed, they may have managed to preserve some records that go clear back to there, which ties into some research that me and Roger and another guy that does a series with us, Mr. Robot. We've been doing some research on the Agarthians, or the Agarian peoples that live in the Hollow Earth. And they were originally Atlanteans and Lemurians, but they fled underground in the aftermath of an ancient nuclear war. But the Vatican may have some of the records from them, and maybe even, hell, there may even be a vault underneath the Vatican or something that leads into the Hollow Earth, for all we know. So it's kind of interesting how what he was talking about, the Vatican having those records and stuff going back maybe thousands of years. It kind of does tie into what me and Roger and Mr. Robot are currently working on very, very nicely.
Mm-hmm. Now, bringing that up, that's actually a good thing. What's your take on the Agarthian theories, Brian?
Well, I think the Earth is cavernous. I don't think it's hollow like a balloon, completely hollow. But I think there's caverns. Like maybe Antarctica's got a cavern, and there's underground bases. But I don't know that much about the Agarthians. I guess I don't really have too much of an opinion. Don't know much about it.
Okay. I figured I'd run that by you to see what you were thinking. Or do
you mean like Shambhala? It's the same thing as Shambhala.
Shambhala, especially.
Well, yeah, actually, I started off my Buddhist life with Shambhala International, Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah, well, I think there's definitely an underground alien base in the Himalayas. That's probably closest. And Pat Price, who died in 1975, he was one of the great remote viewers for the CIA. He was likely murdered. I believe he was murdered, but he said there was an underground base in the Himalayas and Mount Haines, Alaska, and in Western Australia. And then later he was murdered or he died. So yeah, I definitely believe that and it's an alien base, not an American or man-made base, but an alien base in the Himalayas. So maybe that's your Agartha.
Yeah.
Since he was murdered, he was probably onto something. That's how you usually know they're onto something.
Yeah, he was concerned about the Mount Hayes, Alaska. He thought, oh, maybe I said something I shouldn't have. He said that because to the Americans, maybe that's very sensitive. But what happened? He died in a hotel room in Las Vegas hours before, the day before. Someone deliberately bumped into him and kicked him in the calf, like jabbed him in the calf. So he was probably injected with something in his calf, which caused a heart attack the next day or hours later. So it seemed to have been deliberate. So, and also when he died, before his wife was informed, they cremated the body. So this means it wasn't the Soviet Union that sent a spy to kill him. No, the Americans themselves. This is just my summation. Because they chose to cremate the body before even informing the wife what you want to do with your husband's body, it had to be an inside job.
Yeah.
So that's my think about.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. A brilliant, remote viewer like that we lost.
And it's interesting that you brought that up too, because you did mention the Soviet Union, you know, and another thing that I noticed that's being lost in a lot of the conspiracy slash ufologists stories these days is the dead scientists. I mean, you remember hearing about like lists and lists of scientists that had either been disappeared or they were killed mysteriously. You never hear about that anymore.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that in a while, but they got to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah, but like during the Cold War, especially, I mean, people were being killed off left and right, and you know, there's deaths that had occurred that you could clearly say it had to do with espionage and stuff like that. But then there were just some strange deaths too, and people that just vanished. Scientists.
I remember years ago. Now this isn't necessarily the absolute best source for anything, but you know, you guys remember a show called Ghost Adventures, right? I'm sure you.
No, I
I'm
forget.
sure you do, Roger.
I'm
Yeah,
so
at
old,
least.
I can't remember. I'm 64.
Okay. It was some paranormal investigators that went around, and they went to this one place in Arizona called Stardust Ranch, I think it was, and there was this guy. His wife kept getting kidnapped by Greys, and supposedly there was this scientist who managed to get a tissue sample of the Greys, or these aliens that kept trying to kidnap his wife. I don't know if they were Greys like you were describing earlier, Brian, but they were some variation of it, and he found that their cells were neither entirely plant nor entirely animal, but they were a fusion of some unrecognized plant and animal cell, like half plant, half animal, but neither the plant nor animal cell was native to anything we know of on Earth.